are extremely minor, but when we will study the subject, we have to discuss those minor issues as well. Now, what's a Zaif hadith? For the masses, I think it's enough to know what a Sahih hadith is, and what a Zaif hadith is, and what a Mutawatir hadith is. We should know what a Mutawatir hadith is. There is a discontinuity in the chain of narrators. One of the reporter has a disparate character and does not possess the ability of retaining the text. There is ambiguity in the isnad or in the matan of the hadith. Interesting part. When we say, for instance, you hear a hadith, a person who knows a little bit about history will say this hadith is zaif in its matan. You do not even have to go into the chain of narrators for that. For example, Hazrat Umar heard that his sister had all of a sudden converted to Islam. He got extremely furious, went to her house to ask her what happened. I mean, what happened to you all of a sudden? You were fine and now you all of a sudden converted to a Muslim. As soon as he reached her house, he heard her reciting Surah Hadid. Now, if anyone reads this event, they will know that Hadid is a Madni Surah. It's a Madni Surah. Now, two things are possible. Either the Hazrat heard about Surah Hadid before the Prophet, or this hadith is zaif in its own matan. So you will immediately say that I don't even need to go into the narrators of this hadith. I will say this hadith is zaif in its own matan. Right? So that's just an example that I wanted to give you. I don't want to go into the details of Mursal, Muallaq, Mudallas, and let's just move forward. We can discuss that at a later stage because we don't have much time and we have a lot of things to cover right now. Sure. And Asim over there is saying, hurry up. So, anyways, so what's a Mawdu Hadith? Imam Dhahabi states, he defines what a Mawdu Hadith is by saying the matan is against the established norms of the Prophet's sayings. The matan itself, if it goes against the sunnah of the Prophet, it is daif. If it goes against the sunnah of the basic sunnah of the Prophet, it's daif. We find a lot of these hadiths in a lot of Sahih books, if you know what I'm trying to say. Unfortunately. If one or more reporters are liars, they are famous to be liars. For example, if you hear a hadith by Marwan, you'll think he was a liar. We don't accept this hadith, especially as Shias. And you will be shocked to know that you do get a lot of hadith by Ziyad and by Marwan, unfortunately. Okay, Mutawatir hadith. Pardon?
No, nothing.
Mutawatir hadith. Now, Mutawatir hadith is a hadith for which you can say in confidence that these are the exact words of the Prophet. The exact words. And one extremely interesting hadith is considered mutawatir by the entire Muslim Ummah, and that is hadith al-Safar. I'm leaving two things behind, the Quran and my Ahlul Bayt. If you leave either one of them, you shall go astray.
Nare salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajjal farajah.
The argument is not on the hadith. The argument is not on the hadith, but the argument is on who the Ahlul Bayt really are. But let's not get into that. We can very clearly prove from all kinds of sources who the Ahlul Bayt are, but let's not get into that. That's a lot.
Wa Muhammad ali Muhammad balantar salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad
wa ajjal farajah.
Fahrist Ibn Nadim. Let's recite a salawat for him, please.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad
wa ajjal farajah.
We do not find a single book by this person, although he has written several. But we do not have a single book by Ibn Nadim. This person was present during the time of Mamun, during the Abbasid Caliphate in Baghdad. As we all know that Baghdad used to be a center of all kinds of intellectual activities, a lot of scientific research, a lot of stuff was done during the Abbasid dynasty. And I think an amazing documentary made by BBC called Science and Islam. I think you all should really watch it. I learned a lot from it. So we do not find a single book by Ibn Nadim, but he did an amazing work. Mamun had a huge library, and whoever would come up with books and would translate books from the Persian Empire or from the Romans, Mamun would pay that person in gold by the weight of the book. So he had a huge collection of books in his in the library of the palace. Ibn Nadim went and sat in the library for, I would say, maybe years and years and years. And you know what he did? This is the translation period. He simply started making an index of all the books in that library. Just an index. In that index, he had the name of the book, he had the name of the author, he had the name of the chapters, and a brief description of what was being talked about. It's not an index like we see today. It was a different kind of index. It was a work that he really did. The entire library was burned. Most of those books were not to be found. Some remained, and out of those some books, we had Fahrist ibn Nadim. You might even find it online. It is because of him that we know about personalities such as Azbad bin Nabata, who was a primary source. It is because of this personality that we know that primary sources actually existed. That there were people who were eyewitnesses of Karbala, who wrote about it by the commandment of Imam Hussain AS. The entire battle was planned to the very core. There is absolutely no doubt about that in history. Salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad
وعجل فرجهم.
So Ibn Nadim did an amazing work, and we are benefiting from that work to this date as we speak. Now, a small list of famous maqatil that we all should know about. Maqtal Hussain by Abi Mikhnaf, by Ibn Sa'd, by Balahduri, and Balahduri is a Sunni narrator, but is considered a personality and authority, as a matter of fact, as far as the science of hadith is concerned. And in our coming slides, when we talk about Karbala, we're going to prove what Imam Hussain actually did through the sources of Balahduri. A person who no Muslim could say a lie. Hadith is narrated by him, in which he is a sanad and authority. Dinabri and Ibn Atam. These are all famous maqatil by him. Maqtal that did not survive, the maqtal of Waqdi, we find out about these maqtals through the Fahrist of Ibn Nadim. We have Nasab al-Mazahim, we have Abu Ubaid Qasim al-Maqtal. These are all maqtal that never survived. I could go into the details of each and every maqtal right now, but you can have the names when the session ends later on. I want to try and cover as much as I can so that we can all benefit from this time that we're sharing right now. Now, as far as Abi Mikhnaf is concerned, Abi Mikhnaf is considered a primary source in today's DNA because he is practically one of the only maqtals, well, one of the few maqtals that we have that we use as a primary source. Now, who was this person? Who was Abi Mikhnaf? Do we really know about him? All the majalis that we hear, everything that we know about Imam Hussain is to this maqtal. Maqtal is a book that describes as to what really happened in Karbala through the references of ahadith. So it's a collection of ahadith on Karbala, basically. So, very thin book. It's available online as well. Maqtal ibn Abi Mikhnaf, you should all go and read it. It's essential and extremely important that we read it, especially in modern. So Abi Mikhnaf's name was Lut ibn Yahya. He belonged to the Asd tribe and lived in Kufa. He died in 157 AH, after Hijrah. He was the first historian to systematically collect the reports dealing with the events of the Battle of Karbala. His work was considered reliable amongst later Shia and Sunni historians like Tabri. Tabri, when he wrote about Imam Hussain, his referential point was Mikhnaf, Abi Mikhnaf. He has based his work on the eyewitness testimony of Muhammad ibn Qais, Harith ibn Abdullah ibn Sharik al-Amri, Abdullah ibn Asim, Dahal ibn Abdullah, Abu Janib al-Kalbi, Adi ibn Hurmala, and Muhammad ibn Qais. Abi Mikhnaf's original work has been lost. What we have right now in today's day and age is the work of his student, Hisham al-Kilbi. Hisham al-Kilbi was a student. He learned everything from his teacher. He read the book. He had a copy of the book. And now, when we read Abi Mikhnaf, we call it Maqtal ibn Abi Mikhnaf, but it's actually been written by Hisham al-Kilbi. A loud salawat for him, please.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
It is extremely important that we acknowledge the beautiful work these personalities have done. It was truly a jihad. When we say that you can do jihad by pen, it is true. You really can do jihad with the pen, and this is what Abi Mikhnaf did. Ibn Nadim enumerates 22 monographs. 22 collections he wrote. One book must have had several volumes. He had a book on Siffin, which actually wrote the entire war that took place, the very details of that war. You find about those books in the Fahrist of Ibn Nadim, as I discussed, but it is not present amongst us today's day and age. And Najashi lists 28. Najashi is also a narrator, an author who talks about Abi Mikhnaf, who gives his reference all the time. He states that they weren't 22, they were 28 books. We don't have them, it's all gone. Then we have a person called Madani. Madani was a historiographer. He was an extremely innovative personality. When we talk about Rijal, when we talk about Sanad, when we talk about Ahadith, he was an innovator in his own right. And the reason why I say that he was an innovator is because this whole concept that we have, that a hadith has to be collected in a certain way, it has to have narrators, the entire narrator should be mentioned. The process of collecting hadith was introduced by Madani. He died in 221 AH, wrote over 200 books in his lifetime. As a historian, Al-Madani's method was that of a collector rather than a commentator of history. For his sources, he chose the parts that he deemed suitable and composed his work, often providing a reference to the chain of transmission, isnad, of the account from the eyewitness to Al-Madani's source. Let me give you a small example of Allama Majlisi. Salawat for him, please.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Bihar al-Anwar, an extremely famous book, written by Allama Majlisi, was not written, collected by Allama Majlisi. Hayat al-Qulub, extremely famous book for Shias as well, also a collection of ahadith written by Allama Majlisi. Allama Majlisi said that I am not a narrator, I am not a rawi. He said I am simply a collector of ahadith. Now, this is the personality who was present during the time of Ghaibat al-Kubra, not even the Ghaibat al-Sughra. Luckily, Imams always, the Shias always had their Imams as a referential point. Hence, they never felt the need to actually have a book, a collection of ahadith like Bukhari, Muslim, or any of the other siyasattas. Because we always had a reference point. Our reference point was our divine Imam, our present leadership. After Ghaibat al-Sughra, when the connection was lost with Imam Mahdi in his Ghaiba, what were we supposed to do? It was in times like these when personalities like Sheikh Saduq, when personalities like Sheikh Mufid devoted their life and their time to collect the ahadith that we had. Allama Majlisi said that I am a collector of ahadith. I will not give you the narrators. You can go and check the sanad, the sihat of the hadith on your own, whether it's sahih, whether it's zaif or whatever. You can check that on your own. It is not my job to tell you if a certain hadith is sahih or zaif. Allama Majlisi collected all the hadiths. Hence, you will find in Bihar and Hayat al-Qulub that most hadiths do not have a chain of narrators. But personalities like Murtaza Askari, they have done tremendous amount of work in which we are simply collecting only those ahadiths right now which are sahih. That work is in progress right now, and hopefully we should get that work by next year in Farsi, inshallah. Salawat, please.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad
wa ajjal farajah.
Sheikh Mufid, also an extremely important personality, as I spoke about. His name was Abu Abdullah Muhammad ibn Numan al-Akbari. Al-Baghdadi, known as Al-Shaykh al-Mufid and Ibn al-Muallim for his expertise in philosophical theology, he was an eminent 12er Shia theologian. He was born on 11th of Ziqad, 336 Hijrah, and died on 413 AH. He was a student of Shaykh al-Saduq, al-Babuwa al-Qummi. Al-Shaykh al-Saduq is the person, we have very famous books by Al-Shaykh al-Saduq. I would say he is one of those personalities who actually saved Shia Islam to a great extent, and also his father. Shaykh al-Saduq's very famous book is Al-Shara. I hope we should all read it. There's another very famous book by Shaykh Saduq by the name of Man La Yahzar al-Faqih. The Tawzil Masail that we have in today's day and age, the way it's written, this is actually inspired by the work of Shaykh Saduq in Man La Yahzar al-Faqih, in which he talks about different problems like the problem of wuzu, qaza namaz, how to do qurbani, etc., etc. But he does not give his opinion, he states the hadith on the matter. And whatever work our mujtahideen, may Allah grant them a long life, inshallah. All from mujtahideen, they to this date follow the exact same pattern that was followed by Shaykh Saduq. Allowed